video. Please let me know in the chat pod if you can hear our voice. Okay, I think everyone can hear my voice. All right then. Okay. So good afternoon again, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Emi Fumitasari. I'm the student counselor of Nufik Neso Indonesia. Welcome for joining our event study in Holland online di Rumah Aja series. For those who are joining us the first time, we organize this event every Wednesday and every Friday. So every Wednesday we organize online learning that is normally the speaker will be from Dutch higher education institutions or Holland alumni. And for every Friday we organize interactive seminar that the topic will related to living and studying in the Netherlands. And the speaker will be normally students or Holland alumni. So we organize this every week. If you interested, you can always see our social media channel to see the upcoming event. In today's online learning, we have a lecture from Tilburg University. The lecture will be brought by Dr. Winan Bodewas, the senior lecturer of entrepreneurship and the academic director of the Bachelor Program Entrepreneurship and Business Innovation at Tilburg University. The topic that Dr. Winan will be presenting is creating value through entrepreneurship and business innovation. He's here. He will be not alone in the session because he is accompanied by Miss Josine Janssen, the International Recruitment Officer for Tilburg University. And before I move forward, at the end of this webinar, we also be having a question and answers session. So please write your questions in the chat box in the right corner of your screen. The questions can be related to the topic or related to topics, general questions about Tilburg University. You may write your questions during the presentation, and we will try our best to discuss one by one during the Q&A. Or Ms. Janssen will also be happy to answer your question through the chat box as well. So before I move forward to reading a short biography about Dr. Winan, I'm going to give you a brief introduction about Nufik Neso. All right. For those who don't know yet what is Nufik Neso is, Nufik is a Dutch non-profit organization funded by the Dutch government. We support internationalization in higher education. And we have currently 10 representative offices in 10 different countries, such as Brazil, China, India, Indonesia, Mexico, Russia, South Africa, South Korea, Turkey, and Vietnam. What is exactly is Nufik Neso? Neso itself is short for Netherlands Education Support Office. For Nufik Neso, we have several activities that we do. The first one is providing study in Holland information to prospective students in Indonesia, for example. And we do student counseling also for students. We promote cooperation, institutional cooperation between higher education institutions. For Indonesia is Indonesian institutions and Dutch institutions, and we act as a key facilitator for Holland Alumni Network. So for those who are just graduating from a Dutch higher education institution, we organize a lot of activities such as Holland Alumni Talk, Holland Alumni receptions, and so on. We also manage different kinds of scholarship programs such as Studeren in Netherlands, Orange Knowledge Program, Orange Tulip Scholarship, and EUShare. And lastly, we also facilitate scientific research collaboration between Indonesia and the Netherlands. Okay, so if you have further questions or if you would like to receive more information regarding study in Holland, you can always contact us via our website or social media channels, as well as via emails and our telephone numbers stated in the slide. We also organize an online counseling. We currently do this every Monday to Thursday. So better to check out the website through bit.ly/osiniso. Other than that, we also currently will be organizing a virtual study in Holland fair. This fair will be organized on Wednesday, 18 November 2020, from 4 to 8 o'clock Indonesia time. So make sure that if you would like to know more about the study program and consult with the Dutch higher education institution, there are more than 20 institutions that participating in this event, such as, for example, Tilburg is also participating. So be sure to register yourself via bit.ly/SHIHA fair. All right, that's about my presentation. We'll now give you a brief description about Dr. Winand. After this, also Ms. Jansen will give you a brief introduction about Tilburg University itself. Okay, so about Dr. Winand Bodaus is a senior lecturer at Tilburg University. He teaches introductory and advanced courses on entrepreneurship. He began his academic career at Rotterdam School of Management, in which he obtained his doctorate and started to teach strategic management, and later switched to teaching for entrepreneurship. Throughout his career journey, he has served as a professor or lecturer in the field of entrepreneurship at several higher education institutions in Europe, such as Hogeschool Rotterdam, KU Leuven in Belgium, Maastricht School of Management, and including Tilburg University. Prior to his academic career, Dr. Winand attended Harvard Business School in 2007, where he took entrepreneurial studies. He holds a PhD from Rotterdam School of Management Erasmus University, master's degree in business administration from Groningen University, and bachelor degrees in chemical engineering from the Hansa University of Life Sciences, Groningen. Aside from his academic and career journey, he also occasionally coach young and entrepreneurs, and he has been involved to speak about entrepreneurial innovation in various seminars and workshops, among others, ABN AMRO, Province of Limburg, Deloitte, ING, Port of Rotterdam, Gemeente Maastricht, and many others. So that's a short introduction about Dr. Winand. Hi, Dr. Winand. How are you? Good morning.
I'm fine. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, great. It's a very honor to have you with us today. And I would like to welcome Ms. Jansen as well. Ms. Josin Jansen, hi.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for inviting us.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Jansen. I think I will leave the floor to Ms. Jansen to give your introduction about Tilburg University, and then can be continued with Dr. Winand.
Yeah, that sounds like a good plan. Thank you. Hi, everyone, and welcome to this session. My name is Josin Jansen. I'm International Recruitment Officer for Tilburg University. So in case you have any questions about our university in general, the study programs that we offer or our admission requirements, please just ask them in the chat and I will try to answer them as good as possible. A little bit about Tilburg University. Tilburg University is located in the south of the Netherlands, near the Belgian border, and we're located in the so-called Brainport region, which is Europe's top technology region at the moment. And we have companies there such as ASML, Philips, Tesla, but also a lot of startups. And between our university and those companies, there's a lot of joint research projects, internship opportunities, but also career opportunities in case you want to stay in the Netherlands after your graduation. And Tilburg University was founded in 1927 as a business school, but our founders soon realized that in order to become a good business associate, business person, or in order to contribute to society, you also need to develop your soft skills, your social skills. And that is why we soon expanded to the broadest sense of the social sciences. And we now have 6 schools on one beautiful green campus. Tilburg University is actually one of the only universities in the Netherlands that has a campus where you have all the faculties, the sports center, study facilities, and restaurants in one place. So you don't have to cycle through the city. The 6 schools that we have at the moment are the Tilburg School of Economics and Management. That's where Wienand is lecturing at the moment. The Tilburg Law School, the Tilburg School of Social and Behavioral Sciences, the Tilburg School of Humanities and Digital Sciences, Geronimus Academy of Data Science, and the Tilburg School of Catholic Theology. And all those 6 schools offer English-taught bachelor's and master's programs. At the moment, I believe we have more than 10 international bachelor's programs and more than 40 international master's programs. So there's a choice for everyone. Tilburg University is known for its high-quality education and social orientation. According to Times Higher Education Rankings 2021, we belong to the top 50 in the world in the fields of business, economics, law, and psychology. So you will definitely enjoy good quality education at Tilburg University. And we're also known for our social orientation. Tilburg University's motto is understanding society, and this means that we really look for students that try to act and contribute to society. So in all of our programs, we have this social responsibility component embedded in our program. One last thing I want to say before I want to give the floor to Wienand is that we are a middle-sized university. We have around 19,000 students at the moment of more than 100 different nationalities. So you will definitely not be the only international student in our university in case you decide to study at Tilburg University. That was it from my side. In case you have any questions, just let us know. And now I would like to give the floor to Wienand.
Okay. Well, welcome everybody. Also on my behalf, it's a pleasure to be here with you. I realized that in the past 20 years, I've taught to many students, also from Indonesia. And actually, in announcing, in sharing this event that we now have today, I also shared it with some of my alumni. And then it's really nice to see that they were eager to share it again with people who, like you, are based in Indonesia. It's actually a pretty big decision that you are about making, where you want to either start your studies or continue your studies. It's a huge investment. And from what we know from people who have decided to go abroad, and in our case, come to the Netherlands to study, is that it's really a life-changing experience. And it's an important one. It's a big expense. It's costly. So we really want you to make an informed decision. And well, I'm responsible for a new program at Tilburg University, and as a result, I'm eager to make sure that people outside the Netherlands also know that we have this program. Not to talk you into coming. I understood that quite a few of you are already completing a bachelor's program. So then look at what I share and say we also have similar types of courses at master's level in Tilburg. But if you, for example, would have a brother or a niece or who is about to decide to study abroad, which for many people is a bigger step than studying abroad for a master's, then I would love you to be excited about my program and about the courses that we teach, so that you can help us spread the word. So that was my promo story. When we in Tilburg talk about entrepreneurship, we always tie entrepreneurship to creating new value. And value is not necessarily about making money. No, many entrepreneurs say, of course, we need to make money to pay for our expenses. But for a lot of entrepreneurs, that value can also be societal value, which resonates very well with the identity of Tilburg University. So people who start an entrepreneurial project to fight a social problem or to do something positive for an ecological problem, and do it in a way that it can be self-sustaining, and where also as an entrepreneur you can reap the fruits of all your efforts, including your employees, that they can also reap the benefit from these activities. Now, we know that entrepreneurial initiatives, the creating of new companies that grow large, is extremely important to drive economic development, to create jobs, prosperity in an economy. And that's why we and people around the world are passionate about encouraging young people, people like you, to think about entrepreneurship as either a career opportunity or as a professional environment where you can find a job and grow as a professional. Then to us, and we follow here a definition from two Harvard professors, we see entrepreneurship as the relentless pursuit of opportunity, where you're not being stopped by an apparent lack of resources. So you realize that there's something that can be done that is worthwhile doing, and you want to do it knowing that you don't have the means to do it. And then mobilizing these means is a big step. It's a big part of the work of what entrepreneurs do. But it starts with opportunity. And in our bachelor program, we've also decided to making the finding and developing of opportunity a really big part of our education. And it's a unique program. We are the only university level program in entrepreneurship and innovation in the Netherlands, and one of the few in Europe. And our program is taught by people who mostly actively do research, and we really want to expose our students to a blend of academic insight collected by researchers from all over the world with entrepreneurial practice. And we do it by helping/forcing our students to actually start engaging in an entrepreneurial process so that they can also learn from doing. In the program, we have what we call Entrepreneurship in Action. It's 4 courses that gradually move from how do you find opportunity to how do you actually launch a business and how do you grow a business. And in this first course, it's all about finding a need, where we say, well, if you want to start a new company, if you want to introduce an innovation to the world, it ought to be based on something that people want to have and that they can afford. So in this first course, we start with students that want to learn about entrepreneurship, but not all. Some do already have a company, but most don't. And as a result, say, well, I don't have an idea for a company that I could start or that I could try to learn about before I actually want to start. So what we do with that course is say, well, it's important to understand that people who start a business usually started without having ideas. And they usually started without having lots of money. So in Europe and in the US, the average amount of capital invested in a startup is a mere 10,000 euros. And 10,000 euros is a lot of money, but it's not enough, at least not in the Netherlands, to buy a new car from. So it's a modest amount of money, and most people will be able to raise that amount of money. The issue is whether it will be worthwhile raising it, and that depends on whether you have a good opportunity. And I want to use the remaining of my talk to quickly show you what we are doing in that course by looking at one of the challenges that we have our students working on at this very moment. Students work in teams of 3, and they have to find a need that they believe represents an entrepreneurial opportunity. And every team is given a challenge, which for them is a totally new, they know nothing about this, and they have a semester to get to know the context of that challenge, to learn about issues that people face in that context, and to come back at the end of the course and say, we found opportunity. One of those challenges is about farming wind energy, which also, as I understood, is growing and seen as very important in Indonesia itself. And this particular challenge introduces the students to one of the problems of running wind farms. And that is that these are not only very expensive machines that you have to put in areas where it's very costly to get to, either offshore or onshore. But what is also a challenge is to keep these wind turbines in great shape, because if they get damaged, they become less productive, and then you're losing money, and that's not what you want. So one of the things that they need to do regularly, irrespective whether a wind turbine is onshore or offshore, is to visually inspect the wind turbine blades for damage. If they are damaged, they need to be repaired, but first you need to know whether a repair is necessary. And then if you would start searching, you will find there's all kinds of damages that can occur. And you need to know this, because once you know, you can fix it. And what the students are now learning is that there is basically 3 options that are currently being used to do these inspections. One is to use ropes, and you have someone ascending from the middle of the turbine to the bottom, and actually have to do it twice, because you need to inspect the front of the blade, but also the back side of the blade. This will take a few days to complete for the 3 blades of the turbine. And during those 3 blades, the wind turbine is not able to produce wind. And you cannot choose a day on which there is no wind, because, well, there's too many turbine blades to be inspected. So it's a costly process. You can also imagine that it's somewhat dangerous, because, well, what if the rope breaks? You need a helper on the ground, so you at least need 2 people. But it is a very common way of doing these inspections. An alternative way is that you have a platform that you can have ascend from the middle of the turbine, where you can just walk around. Every time that the platform is being lowered, you can walk around and visually inspect. The third option is using a drone. In that case, you only need 1 operator. The drone can go up very quickly. It can circle around the blade. It can take pictures. It can shoot video. And if you are able to interpret those images, you can see whether there is. So actually, this is seen as a popular way and a promising way of doing these inspections into the future. And student teams very quickly figured out, okay, so this is how they do it. They subsequently tried to get in contact with companies that operate wind turbines in the Netherlands and learned from them which methods are you actually using and why are you using them and what are the issues that you are facing. And for that, we teach them that you should not go into those interviews with what you think will be the problems. You would actually have to ask questions that are as naive as a small child will ask them. You can remember that when you have a little nephew or niece and then really little, that at some point in them growing up, they have this stage where they keep asking questions all the time. Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? And for them, it's a very rapid way of learning. In entrepreneurship, we try to do the same. We call that empathetic interviewing. So you really, while interviewing, try to understand the situation from the person that you are talking to. So how do they experience it? What do they see as frustrations? And you're not going to argue with them that actually what they see as a big problem is a small problem. You want to understand why they see something as a big problem. And from it, you're going to identify things that could be improved, that they would actually appreciate. And this also will prevent you from proposing technical improvements that those people won't consider as valuable. And if you actually would go into the literature on new product development and learn why most new products introduced by established companies fail when they're being launched to the market, well, one of the strongest predictors of product success is a match with client needs. Now you say, well, that's a no-brainer, it's obvious. Well, it's not. It's very hard to find out what people really want and to build it. We teach our students to identify what people want by doing empathetic interviewing. And for some teams, that meant that they ended up interviewing independent entrepreneurs who fly drones on contract basis for wind turbine operators. And they learned from these pilots what their issues are with doing these inspections using their drones. And from these interviews, they say, well, we now think that there is opportunity because, and then they have a rationale. And we call that a theory of opportunity. You presume, you can argue why there ought to be opportunity. For example, a team that talked to drone pilots said, well, one of the nice things of any inspection is that it has to do the job. So a way of doing inspection that is not able to see all defects is not a good way to do inspections. So it's a hard requirement, irrespective how you will do it, you have to be able to find all defects, but that's not enough. You also need to be able to identify the size of the defect. So how big the damage is. Is it 2 centimeters, 5 centimeters, 20? They need to know, because the bigger the damage, the more urgent the repair is. In talking to these pilots, they also learned that they have collisions with the turbine blades. And as a result, a 20,000 euro drone may crash to the ground, and they may have either to repair it, which delays the work and causes cost, or they have to buy a new one. They also explained that depending on the weather, you may not be able to fly your drone. If it's too windy, then the risk of collisions is just too high, and we cannot fly, and we don't like that. What people don't talk about, but if you see what they're doing, would actually be really wonderful. If at some point it would be possible to do an inspection through a drone where no pilot is needed, where you would be able to open a box, a drone will start flying, and it can figure out itself where the blade is, what the front is, what the back is, what the top is, what the bottom, and that it can measure where it is, and it can identify the sizes of potential damages or actual damages. And you may also learn that the turbine operators are willing to pay, at the moment, $3,000 per inspection. Well, if this is what we have learned, what the issues are, we can start thinking about solutions. And for example, you say, well, would it be possible to add something to a drone that reduces the likelihood of collisions? So I address one problem, but if it's a big problem, that may already be enough to have something that we can sell. And you could propose, for example, to add some radar functionality to a drone so that you can measure the actual distance between the drone and the blade, and that you can use it to prevent collisions. But you can also use the distance, knowing the distance between the drone and the blade and your picture, to calculate the size of the damage that you may be seeing. And then students need to check whether this could be really opportunity. And then they learn that in industry reports about what is going to change in the world of operating wind turbines, what is going to change in the world of using drones to do inspection. And say, well, hey, there's more people who have identified radar functionality as a valuable addition to drones being used for these types of purposes. That is for, I think in total, 10 teams in our program. They all in competition have looked at doing better visual inspection of wind turbine blades. this is for one of the teams what they are now learning. And at the end of the course, they can propose that there is a problem that is worthwhile fixing. They have talked to people who would like to have that solution. And when they started with the program in September, they said, well, I want to learn about entrepreneurship, but I would not know what company I could start. Amongst the student group, there are now already students who will get really excited about this crazy context that they never looked into before, where they say, well, there's lots of opportunities where also I could make a difference. And well, that's what we want our students to learn. And it's one of the things that we do in our program. And that's what I wanted to share with you this morning. So I hope that there's questions, because then we can help you make your decision on where you want to study, whether you want to study entrepreneurship, and if so, if you want to do it in the Netherlands, in Tilburg, and perhaps with my program. So I give back the floor to everyone to start asking questions.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Winan, for the interesting presentations. Now, I will change into a Q&A mode. So everyone who has questions, you can type in your questions in the chat box, and I will put it on the screen. Okay. The questions can be anything. It can be related to the topic, or also questions in general about Tilburg University. While waiting for the questions, I have mine as well. Maybe could you, the questions will be for Dr. Winan. Could you share with us, some of the tips and tricks how you start your entrepreneurship, how you start your own business, for example?
Well, the best advice that people say that we can give is to just start. So don't spend too much time considering whether or not you should do it, because you will only be able to learn if something is worthwhile doing by actually trying to do it. And of course, if you are going to try and do an entrepreneurial project, that you would have to be realistic, that you do it in a way that fits who you are and what you can do at this moment. And for example, we at the moment have 300 students in our bachelor's program. Again, they are literally from all over the world. And about 50 of them, before joining our program, had already a registration with the Chamber of Commerce and are already running a commercial company. But the type of business that they do is quite modest. I buy something at a low price, I sell it at a higher price. But for them, it's a meaningful experience. And for them, it's also, at least that's what they say, a nicer way of having a side job than to do a job where someone else dictates when I have to do work. Because if I run my own business, I can decide when I want to put in my effort. But the best advice is to just get going. Another thing that you may want to do if you want to learn about entrepreneurship by just doing it is to go and work for a scale-up entrepreneur. And a scale-up, we would say it's a company of about 5 years old that each and every year has been able to add new employees to the labor force because they have growing demand. And working for such an entrepreneur, you're so close to the heat that it will be impossible not to learn from how that person is actually doing it. And of course, another way of learning how to do entrepreneurship is to come and study, not just with us, but in a program that teaches entrepreneurship. I, over the years, have had quite a lot of students joining a master's program on entrepreneurship who were already running a serious company in which serious money had been invested, but they said, I would like to have this more academic reflection on the things that I do in a day-to-day basis as an entrepreneur.
Okay.
And someone asked a question, is there a master in entrepreneurship? Yes, we have. At this moment, we have a track on entrepreneurship in our Masters of Strategic Management. In the future, we probably will have a dedicated master's, but the difference between a track in a master's and a separate master's is more an administrative thing. So if you do the track in entrepreneurship in our master's in strategic management, it's about having the full experience of doing a dedicated entrepreneurship master. So yes, we do have one.
Can I add something to that, Wienand? Because we also have a 2-year master's in data science and entrepreneurship, and it's a joint degree together with the Technical University of Eindhoven. And in this master's program, you really merge like management, entrepreneurship, and business models with knowledge on data science. So, for example, mathematics, statistics, and computing science. So that's another master's that we have in entrepreneurship.
Yes, yeah, go on.
So, of course, I cannot read all the questions, but the ones in English I can read. And I see an interesting one by Mutia. Well, I don't think that there is a single entrepreneur who would dare hoping to fix it and to fix all problems that result from Corona. But for example, when Corona came to the Netherlands, there was temporarily a scarcity of face masks in hospitals. And there were quite a lot of entrepreneurs who at that stage reached out to business partners of them in Asia, knowing that there was stock of masks in Asia. But if you would put them on a container, it would take a month before they would arrive in Europe. And who just opened up their network and very quickly also saw a business opportunity to bring a few container loads of face masks to the Netherlands. So that's something that entrepreneurs do. They see an opportunity to create value, economic value or social value by jumping on Corona-related problems. So that's where they make a difference. And I read yesterday that Pfizer it's a pharmaceutical company, is collaborating with a German startup that is about, at least they hope to have a vaccine that would be the first vaccine from Europe. If you read the story about these two entrepreneurs, both immigrants from Turkey, who went to university in Germany, they decided to stay in Germany. Of course, many people who come from abroad to study in Europe decide to go back, but they stayed and they started a pharmaceutical company that at some point was able to switch to looking into Corona, and they now have something. And for example, in the pharmaceutical industry, new drugs, new compounds that could be turned into treatments are almost always discovered by startups. And now that there is Corona, you see that lots of startup teams are switching to this new opportunity, but also that new companies are being founded by researchers who believe to have some know-how that could be used to create a vaccine or a treatment. So yeah, there's lots of things that entrepreneurs are doing at the moment, but usually we don't know because we don't know most of the entrepreneurs. But I guarantee you, if you would go to a major research university, academic hospital in Indonesia, and would ask, is there know-how that you now try to apply in treating patients, that you will also come across people in Indonesia who are already or are considering to start companies on the basis of that academic know-how. And the moment there is an apparent need, and with COVID, the need is huge, it's global. Many people feel this desire to make a contribution, but they also feel that it can also make economic sense to do something with that opportunity.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Wienand, for your answers. Hope that answers your question, Mutia. I see here there's actually a interesting question as well from Chisa G. I hope I pronounced that correctly. She asked, how do we identify opportunities in our local communities and address that gap through our business?
Yeah, and this slide that I had about this empathetic interviewing would be my best answer. It's actually by opening your eyes, by going to talk to people in your local community from a point of view where you pretend not to know what the issues are, and you want to discover how they see the issues, what they struggle with, what they have already tried and what didn't work for them, how much effort they're willing to put in to fix the problems that they face in their day-to-day lives. And that from it, you're going to see zillions of things that could be improved. And at some point, you may see one where you feel that there's really a compelling need that something is being done, and where you actually start thinking about how you could do that. Well, and then perhaps 5 years later, you realize that that was the start of your entrepreneurial project. But it starts by going places, talking to people, listening, not to immediately form judgments. And then over time, talk to more, to really understand what is happening. Then you switch modes in interviewing. You try to look for confirmations of what you think are the opportunities, but it starts with opening your eyes. And then, so one thing that you could also do is go and talk to entrepreneurs and ask them, if you were to start a new business, what would you do? And lots of entrepreneurs would say, well, there are so many things that can be done, but unfortunately, I only have one life and I'm already busy. But if you really want to do something that makes sense, and many entrepreneurs would then be willing to share opportunities with you without asking anything in return. So I know that this can be done. I don't have the time for it. I've had students who from that interview not only came back with an idea, but also with an experienced entrepreneur pledging, if you're going to do this, I would like to help. If you need office space, I would be happy to provide you with office space. Perhaps even if you need some money, because I know that this is an interesting opportunity. Unfortunately, I don't have the time for it. So start hanging out with entrepreneurs and also learn from them what they think could be done, but that they don't have the time for.
Okay, so that's the answers, yeah, Chisaji. I hope that answer your questions. The next one is from Fiasti Intan Permata. So she asks when we should make a change in our company, and how do we know that our company is not healthy anymore?
So that's more a business administration question than, or a management question than an entrepreneurship question. So in our program, we're much more looking at new business, sometimes also from a desire to replace existing businesses. So when you in your local community would start doing these interviews, you may learn that a local provider is providing a lousy service, and that people don't like it, but that it has been like this for many years and it's not improving. Then you could go to that company and say, hey, get your act together because your clients would prefer that. You can also say, hey, that company is not doing it good enough. It's an opportunity, because if we would improve, we can take some of their customers and start growing our business. So from an entrepreneurship perspective, a company that is not healthy, well, we would say, well, perhaps it's end of life and we can replace it with a new company. Very often, when you want to understand whether a company is not healthy, at least that's what some of the entrepreneurs that I know told me, don't look at the financials. Because the financials are a consequence of things that you don't do well. And before the things that you don't do well translate in financials, may already be several months to half a year. So one of the entrepreneurs that I know says, well, the metric that drives our success is the weekly request for quotations that we receive. If the request of quotations goes down, it bodes bad weather. And we need to understand why the quotations are going down, so we can act on it. We only need to know whether the quotations go down, but also our success rate with the tenders in which we compete. If that goes down, we're in bad weather, we need to act. So you would actually look at factors that drive the success of your company that later will translate into financial success, and you act on those metrics. And that usually has a lot to do with being able to find and keep customers.
Okay. There's another question from Jura. Hello, I'm interested with this topic. Furthermore, are there any specification for entering undergraduate, especially for this kind of major? I think this questions could be answered by Ms. Janssens as well.
Yeah, I already answered it in the chat. There are several admission requirements that you need to meet. So first of all, we will look at your diploma or the diploma that you're going to obtain. I'm not sure if I pronounce it correctly, so my apologies in advance for that. We accept the Sekolah Menengah Atas, so the SMA, with a minimum average grade of 80% in combination with the Surat Keterangan Asal Ujian Nasional with a score of at least 7.5 in all subjects. Or we accept the Sekolah Menengah Atas with at least 1 year of academic education. Besides that, we of course ask for an English proficiency certificate because the program is fully English taught. We accept the TOEFL, the IELTS, or the Cambridge. For the Cambridge, we ask for a minimum score of C, so A, B, or C. For the TOEFL, we only accept the internet-based test with a minimum score of 80. And we also accept the IELTS academic test with a minimum overall score of 6.0 and minimum subscores of 5.5. Please note that we only accept language certificates that are less than 2 years old at the time of your application. In some instances, for example, if you grew up in the US or you have a passport from the UK or you studied at an international high school. So for example, if you obtained or going to obtain the International Baccalaureate, the IB diploma, you do not have to submit a language certificate. And all those exceptions are mentioned on our website. I will put the link there as well. Besides that, we of course ask for mathematics. You need to have a minimum level in mathematics at least to start this program. And for the mathematics, it needs to be part of the SKHUN with a score of at least 7.5. But I will put the link there as well. I hope this answers your question.
Thank you, Ms. Janssen. Can I also ask if, for example, there's a graduates from Dutch university, would they be required to do IELTS or TOEFL tests, or do they don't need to, to do that test?
If they graduated in the Netherlands, you mean?
Yes.
That really depends. So in case students did an English taught, for example, bachelor's program already in the Netherlands, or in case they have a passport from the UK, the US, Canada, with the exception of Quebec, Australia, New Zealand, then they do not have to do it. And other instances, yes. You can apply for each of our programs without submitting a language certificate. So that's definitely possible. And then our admissions office will inform you whether or not you still need to submit a language certificate. Because the rules really depend on passport, previous education, program that you did beforehand. So it's assessed on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, thank you. This is a question for Dr. Winand from Fanny. Any tips to develop entrepreneurship skill, especially if previously she or he is an employee?
Usually within companies, there are opportunities to work on projects that for the company could open up new markets by introducing a new service or a new product. Getting the possibility within the company to play a role in those types of projects is a context for you to start learning some relevant skills that directly relate to entrepreneurship. So that's a way of doing it. There's also employees who get permission from their employer to privately start doing an entrepreneurial project as a side activity. Another opportunity, of course, would be to enroll into an educational program in which skills development is also prominently featuring. That's what we try to do in our program, but you can be pretty sure that in all entrepreneurship degree programs, skill development is taken seriously.
Okay. So I hope that answered your questions, Fanny. We also have a question from Nadita. Okay, this is a long one. Let me read it for you, Dr. Winan.
I've already read
Hi.
it. I've already read it.
Oh, you have read it. Right. Okay.
No, the harsh reality in the Netherlands, if you start a business and you get funding from investors, they usually refuse you to spend that money on marketing. So the answer is simple. You have to find a way to start selling your product without spending money on ads, because they consider that extremely risky. They would rather give you money to develop technology and product designs, because if you would fail to sell it, the investor would still then have access to what you have created. The big risk with marketing expenses, that if you screw up doing a proper marketing campaign, then all the money is gone. So what you see a lot with startup entrepreneurs, that when they are entering the market, they initially have to find ways which we would call to bootstrap their marketing. So you do want to do marketing activities, but you're not going to pay for it. And for example, generating free publicity is then a very, very important way for entrepreneurs to make sure that people out there start to learn about, hey, there is a company that has something new, I need to look into it. Knowing that lots of entrepreneurs are in a business-to-business market, they will have to start knocking on doors. It may not be nice because it looks like work, but that's the work that entrepreneurs need to do. Marketing you can afford from your cash flow, and if you don't have cash flow, then you have to do marketing in other ways.
Okay. Yes. I think I've missed one question from Muhammad Farhan Barona. Let me publish it on the screen. I think this question is more for, it can be both for Dr. Winan and Ms. Jansen. Does Tilburg University or other university in the Netherlands provide specific entrepreneurship programs for creative fields like interior design, product design, or architecture?
A simple answer is, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Josine, the answer is no. But we do have people who studied architecture who subsequently want to do a master's. So that would be possible. But the university level programs that focus on product design and architecture increasingly will offer entrepreneurship courses and entrepreneurship minors in their own program. And for example, the degree programs in industrial design engineering in the Netherlands, many of them said, well, yes, we train you to be an industrial designer, but once you are done, you don't necessarily have to go and work for a design company or for, a large company that has a design department. You could also create a design for yourself and turn it into a company. So my experience is that most people who want to do product design and combine it with learning more about entrepreneurship is that they do an industrial design engineering program and then just make sure that they do it at a place that has, let's say, a half-year minor program in entrepreneurship. Then that's already quite a lot. And if you then also get some other courses, if you then still want to do more, you can do a master's. So actually, one of the students that I've had in the past was someone who graduated from industrial design engineering in Delft and then decided to continue with a master's in entrepreneurship.
Yeah. One thing I want to add. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, sure.
Mohammed, I added a link in the chat. So in case you do not see any programs of your interest at Tilburg University, you could check out studyfinder.nl. It's an online database where you can check all the English taught programs that Dutch research universities and Dutch universities of applied sciences offer in English. So in case you're looking for architecture or interior design and you put it in the search bar, you see exactly which universities in the Netherlands offer an English taught program, either bachelor's or master's in that specific field.
Yes. So yeah, I was going to explain about that as well, but
Okay.
Ms. Jansen already explained it very perfectly. So thank you for that. Yeah, I see here that a question from Eunice Caesar. I believe he is one of our representative from EduPlan, who represent Tilburg University. He asked about the a question regarding the national examination for undergraduate student, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I just also been in contact with Fernanda from Tilburg University.
Yeah.
She also asked about that, and yeah, according to the Ministry of Education here, that it's stated that from the official letter from 2020, yeah, they stated that the grades for the graduation from for SMA or a high school graduation, it could be determined by their final grades from their last semester, instead of the SKHUN or the grades that they normally provided for final examination. But they will do it via their final grades, as well as the combination of the five last semesters. So that's what I found on their website currently. But I haven't found any official letter yet for the upcoming year, that is 2000, the academic year of 2021. So if there's a further updates on that, I will for sure we'll let you know about that through Fernanda. Yeah. So
Yeah, what I
yeah.
see, I just received an email from Fernanda, and she says that we're probably going back to the old admission requirements. So that means that students need to submit the SMA plus 1 or 2 years of academic education. But that's not fully official yet, as far as I'm concerned. At least the admissions office is working on it. So once we have new information, we'll inform, of course, Amy, and we'll put it on the website.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Right. I'm looking at the chat box if there's any other questions left. I don't think we have more questions. We still have 3 minutes. I think we can put one. Okay, I just see one question from Fanny. I'll just put it on the screen. Yes, that we know their university offer this course as well. What makes this course, especially the master program, different from other universities? I think she was talking about the previous master program that Dr. Winan mentioned.
Yeah. Well, the master program that we have with together with Eindhoven University of Technology, that's a combination of data science and entrepreneurship. That's pretty unique. And it's also unique in the sense that also there at master's level, students combine more traditional academic courses with hands-on courses in which they apply what they're learning about data analytics to real data analytics projects. And they're also applying what they're learning about data analytics enabled entrepreneurship in course. That's really a unique program that, to my knowledge, doesn't have an equivalent in the Netherlands and only a few equivalents in Europe, which is taught by two universities that are extremely strong on data analytics and that are both also strong on researching and teaching entrepreneurship. With the program that we currently do from Maastricht that has this focus from strategic management on entrepreneurship, what makes that program really unique is that it's rooted in a research department where you find some of the world's leading researchers on corporate entrepreneurship. So trying to understand how people who are employed by a company can drive innovation and change within these companies through entrepreneurial projects. And I think with that program, it is especially being close to some of the leading researchers in the world on corporate entrepreneurship that should make that experience of being in that program, learning from them, from people who work with them, a really unique experience.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I agree as well. But yeah, unfortunately, we still only have 1 minute left. So I think that will be our last questions. So if you have further questions, yeah, about Tilburg University and the programs they offer, you can always contact through yeah, Tilburg University for that questions. And before we wrap up, would like to share with you a survey that you can fill in. It's about a survey about the webinar, the event, about your expectation. And if you have any yeah, comments or suggestions for the next webinar. So we will leave about a minute for this, for you to fill in. And yeah, we will close the webinar. Okay, I see here Ms. Janssens also have shared their contact details. So if you have any further questions, you can always contact them. Okay. So give a couple of seconds. Okay. Yeah, I think it's enough for the survey. I will end the voting. And yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Winand and Ms. Janssens, for joining us today. It's really a pleasure for us to have you here and sharing your yeah, its topic about entrepreneurship and about the information, all of the programs that you offer at Tilburg University. Also, I'd like to thank you for all of the participants who are joining on all of the questions you asked, and it's very interactive as well. Yeah, thank you so much for participating. I will see you on the next webinar session. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
And of course, we look forward to meet some of you in Tilburg.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.